I still remember the night my entire life came crashing down. It was raining outside. The kind of rain that taps on your windows like it's trying to tell you a secret. I was sitting in my favorite chair. The same one I've had for 20 years. A cup of tea growing cold in my hands. I had no reason to suspect that within minutes, my entire existence would feel like a cruel joke. I had always thought of myself as a strong woman. I'd survived heartbreak before, the loss of my parents, the struggles of raising a family on a small income, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to learn. I reached for my husband's old briefcase that he had left in the hallway. He never usually forgot it. And I thought maybe he'd left some work papers he'd need the next day. But as I opened it, a thin manila envelope slid out, sealed but with a tear on the edge. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled out the contents, photos, letters, hospital records. At first, my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. There were pictures of children, 4 of them smiling, playing, growing up. They all looked so familiar in a way that made my heart pound. One of them had my husband's same smile. Another had his stubborn chin. My hands trembled as I flipped through the documents. And then I saw it, the name of their mother. It wasn't some stranger. It was my own sister. My knees buckled, and I fell to the floor. The photos scattered around me, like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. The room spun. The man I had loved, trusted, shared a bed with 4 decades, had fathered 4 children with a woman I grew up sharing secrets with. I don't know how long I sat there on the cold floor, tears streaming down my face, clutching those papers like they might burn me. When my son walked into the room, I thought maybe he'd comfort me. I showed him the photos with shaking hands, expecting him to be as shocked as I was. But he didn't look shocked. He didn't even look surprised. He just sighed, sat down across from me, and said quietly, "Mom, we didn't want you to find out this way." Those words hit harder than any betrayal could. Who was we? And that's when it hit me like a knife to the chest. My son had known. He had known for years. He had eaten at my table, kissed my cheek, watched me hug my husband goodnight, all while carrying this monstrous secret. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break every dish in the house. Instead, I sat there in silence, my tears drying on my face, my heart turning to stone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair until the sun came up, staring at those photos, memorizing every detail. The pain was unbearable, but somewhere deep inside me, a fire started to burn. I realized something in those quiet hours. I had spent my whole life giving love, giving forgiveness, giving everything I had to my husband, my sister, my son. And what had I gotten in return? Lies, secrets, betrayal. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. The morning after I found the letters, I felt like the walls of the house were whispering to me. Every picture frame, every piece of furniture seemed to hold a memory that no longer felt true. I couldn't look at my family's photographs without wondering which smiles were lies. I made myself coffee, but I didn't taste it. My mind was somewhere else, circling around the same questions. Who found those letters back then? Who hid them? I started with the one person who might have known everything, Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol had practically raised me after Mama died. She was the one who held me when I cried, who cooked my meals, who told me Mama was in a better place. I called her that afternoon. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "Carol," I said, "I need to come by. There's something we have to talk about." She hesitated. Just that pause was enough to make my heart beat faster. When I arrived, she was sitting on her porch, her knitting abandoned in her lap. She looked up at me with those watchful eyes of hers, eyes that had always seemed so kind but now seemed cautious. I didn't waste time. I placed the box on the table between us. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found it under my bed," I said. "Yesterday. And I read every word. For a moment, her face drained of color. Her hands gripped the edge of her chair. "Carol," I said, my voice breaking, "why didn't you give me these letters? Why did you let me think Mama was dead all these years?" She looked down at her lap, twisting her hands together. Then, finally, she spoke. "It wasn't my decision," she said. "Your father. He told me not to give them to you. He said it was for your own good." My father. The man I had adored. The man who told me bedtime stories and kissed my forehead every night. He was the one who decided I should grow up motherless. My stomach turned. "Why?" I demanded. "Why would he do that?" Carol sighed, and I saw tears glistening in her eyes. "Because he hated her for leaving," she said softly. "He thought she didn't deserve you. He thought you'd be better off without her." I felt like the ground was tilting under me. "So he lied," I whispered. "He lied, and you helped him." Carol nodded slowly. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you grew up without the confusion, without waiting for her to come back, you'd be happier. But I see now I was wrong." I stood up, my hands clenched at my sides. "You didn't protect me," I said, my voice shaking. "You broke me. You made me mourn someone who wasn't gone. You let me hate her when all she wanted was to hold me again." Carol reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I left her house without another word, my mind spinning. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The letters sat on my table, almost glowing in the lamplight, as if they were alive. I read them again, slower this time, letting every sentence sink in. In one of the later letters, Mama wrote something that made my breath catch. "I know your father won't let me see you, but I won't stop trying. One day, you'll know the truth, my sweet girl. One day you'll know how much I loved you." I pressed the letter to my heart and sobbed. The next day, I went to the cemetery where they had told me Mama was buried. I stood over the stone with her name carved into it and felt nothing but rage. Because now I knew she wasn't even buried there. I needed more answers. I needed the whole truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. After leaving Aunt Carol's house, I drove aimlessly for hours. The roads blurred, my mind racing faster than the car. I stopped at an old diner I used to go to as a teenager, sat at a booth, and stared at my untouched coffee. I was thinking of all those birthdays I spent crying because Mama wasn't there. All the school plays, the graduations, the nights I lay awake wondering what I had done to make her leave me. Now I knew she hadn't left me at all. She had been fighting for me, and my father had turned that fight into silence. I decided to dig deeper. If Carol knew, maybe others did too. My father's younger brother, Uncle Ray, had always been closer to Mama than Dad was. If anyone knew the truth, it was him. I called him that evening. "Uncle Ray," I said, "I need to see you. It's urgent." He didn't hesitate. "Come over," he said. When I got there, he opened the door with a warm smile that faded when he saw my face. "You've been crying," he said gently. I didn't bother with small talk. I held up the box of letters. "Did you know?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped aside and motioned me in. When we sat down, he let out a long, weary sigh. "Yes," he said finally. I knew. Something inside me broke. "You knew and you didn't tell me," I demanded. He winced. "I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But your father, he made me promise." "Promise what?" "That I'd let you believe she was gone. That I'd never tell you the truth." I stood there, my whole body trembling. "Why did he hate her so much?" I asked. Ray hesitated. "Because she didn't just leave him," he said. "She left because she found out something about him, something ugly." My heart was in my throat. "What are you talking about?" Ray looked me in the eye. "Your father was having an affair," he said quietly, "with one of his coworkers. Your Mama found out. She confronted him, and when he refused to stop, she packed her things and tried to take you with her. He stopped her, told her if she left, she'd never see you again. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. My father, the man I had idolized, was a liar, a cheater, and a manipulator. Ray put a hand on my shoulder. She left because she loved you. She thought she could find a way to get you back legally. She wrote those letters because she wanted you to know she never gave up on you. Tears streamed down my face. All these years, I whispered, I hated her for nothing. Ray's eyes softened. Your father was a complicated man, he said, but he loved you in his own way. He thought he was protecting you. I shook my head. No, he was protecting himself. Protecting his pride. I left Ray's house that night with a storm inside me. I went home, sat on my couch, and stared at the box of letters again. Suddenly, I felt an urge to find Mama if she was still alive. I didn't know where to start. But I had to try. I spent hours searching through old records, calling distant relatives, even digging through public archives. Then, one evening, I found something that made my heart race, a return address. On one of the later letters, it was from a town 3 hours away. Could she still be there? I decided to go. I didn't tell anyone. This was my journey, my truth to uncover. The next morning, I packed a small bag, got in my car, and drove. With every mile, my heart pounded harder. What if she wasn't there? What if she was? When I finally pulled into the quiet little town, I drove slowly, scanning every street. I asked around at the local post office if they knew the woman who had sent the letters. The clerk nodded. Yes, I remember her, she said. Sweet woman. She used to come here every week to send letters. Always looked so sad. My chest tightened. Do you know where she lived? I asked. The clerk hesitated, then gave me an address. I drove there with shaking hands. It was a small, white house with a garden full of wildflowers. I sat in the car for a long time, staring. Finally, I got out and walked to the door. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. After a long pause, the door creaked open, and there she was. My mama. Older, her hair silver, her face lined with years of waiting, but unmistakably her. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she whispered, "Baby," and I fell into her arms. When Mama held me in her arms, the years melted away. I was 9 again, crying in a train seat, begging her to come back. I was 15 again, screaming into my pillow that she had abandoned me. I was 21 again, watching my father walk me down the aisle, wondering why Mama wasn't there. And now she was. We stood there on the porch for a long time, holding each other. I could feel her tears on my neck, warm and trembling. Finally, she pulled back and touched my face with her weathered hands. You look just like you did the last time I saw you, she whispered. Just taller. I laughed through my tears. You look different, I said, but your eyes are the same. She took my hand and led me inside. The house was small but cozy, filled with handmade quilts, photos of flowers, and shelves of books. Mama made tea, her hands shaking slightly as she poured. We sat at the kitchen table, staring at each other as if afraid to blink. I thought you were dead, I said finally. Her eyes filled again. I know, she said softly. I tried so hard to let you know I wasn't, but your father, he made sure you never saw my letters. I nodded. I found them, I said, all of them. Hidden under my bed. She put a hand to her mouth. All this time, she said, you thought I left you. I hated you, I admitted, my voice breaking. I hated you for years. But now I know. You never stopped loving me. She reached across the table and held my hand. Never, she said fiercely. Not for 1 second. We sat there for hours as she told me everything. How she discovered my father's affair. How she packed her bags and tried to take me with her, only for him to block the door. How she spent years writing letters, hoping one day they would reach me. Every word felt like a knife and a bandage at the same time, painful but healing. Finally, she asked me, why now? After all these years, what made you look for me? I showed her the box. These, I said, they told me the truth. Mama held the letters to her chest and wept quietly. Later that evening, as I was leaving, I made a decision. I couldn't let the rest of the family keep living in the shadow of this lie. I needed to confront them, not just for me, but for Mama. When I got back home, I called a family dinner. My siblings, their spouses, even a few cousins, everyone came. We sat around the big dining table that had once been my father's pride. I stood at the head of the table, my heart pounding. I found something, I began, holding up the box. They all looked confused. These are letters from Mama, I said. Letters that were hidden from me for 30 years. There was a stunned silence. She's alive. My sister finally whispered. Yes, I said. She's alive. And she never abandoned us. Dad lied. He made us believe she was dead because he couldn't stand that she left him. My brother slammed his fist on the table. He what? I nodded. He cheated on her. She found out. She tried to leave and take me with her, and he threatened her. So she left alone and wrote these letters, but he hid them from me. The room was filled with gasps, murmurs, even tears. He made us hate her, my sister said, her voice shaking. We turned our backs on her for no reason. I took a deep breath. I saw her yesterday, I said. She's been waiting all these years for us to come back to her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my brother stood up. We have to see her, he said. Yes, I said. But first, we need to face what Dad did. We can't let his lie keep hurting us. The next week, we held a small memorial, not for Mama, but for the truth we had lost. We gathered at the house, burned copies of the letters Dad had hidden, and promised each other never to keep secrets like that again. Then, one by one, we went to see Mama. She opened her home to each of us, hugging us, crying with us, forgiving us. It was the hardest and most beautiful thing I've ever seen, a family broken by lies, coming back together because of truth. Months later, Mama came to live with me. She said she didn't want to spend another day apart from me. Every morning, we sit together on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. Sometimes we talk about the past. Sometimes we just sit in silence, grateful to have a present together. And every night before I go to bed, I whisper, I love you, Mama. Because now I know she never stopped loving me. And I'll never stop loving her.